Well, hello again, and welcome to APUSH Rough Cuts, tip for the exam number 2. Today I'm going to look at the prompt for the LEQ. And what I'm going to look at is how you really need to look at the question and try to understand the question before you even write your essay. I mean, how can you write about what you know until you actually know what you're supposed to know? So let's look at these two prompts. These are two prompts from actual exams. The first one says, evaluate the extent to which the Great Depression fostered reform in the United States in the period from 1929 to 1945. Now, the first thing I want to ask myself, which of the historical thinking skills is this? I don't see the word cause, I don't see the word change, I don't see the word continue. But I do see this word, reform. Now I think of the word reform, fostered reform. Well, if I think about what does it mean to reform something? Well, that means to make a change. So this one is a change. So I'm going to put Barack Obama right there because he's all about change. So this is a change essay. So what am I trying to see? Something fostered change in the United States. Well, what's the something? The Great Depression did it. Okay, so I'm going to take Ulysses S. Grant. He's going to be my Great Depression. Well, if you think about it, he was the president at the time of one of the first Great Depressions, the 1873 one, the crime of 73. So now I know this is about change, but how did the Great Depression create change in the United States? And I want to remember the dates, 1929 to 1941. Now in the last video tip, I talked about making your timelines. So if you had 1941 down there, you know that's the beginning of World War II. So this falls just before that, but a little bit after. All right? Now the next thing I want to do is, now that I kind of understand, okay, this is about how did the Great Depression create change in the United States between those years. Well, I want to now think about how could I write this essay. Well, it tells me to evaluate the extent. Well, what I always tell my students, that means now this thing we call the rank order. How am I going to rank order this particular essay to create a thesis out of it? Well, here now I got to do a little brainstorming. So I'll put Mr. Linhart graduating college there. We're going to brainstorm for this first one. We're going to think about what are some things that I could talk about that can show how the Great Depression fostered some kind of change. Well, when I think Great Depression, I might think immediately of New Deal. I could use New Deal as one of my arguments in my essay, in my thesis. I can if I want to. I might also think about maybe something more specific. Maybe I think about how it reformed banks, or how it created jobs. Those are all possibilities. Or maybe I want to think of something a little bit more different, because it does say I'm going from 29 with the Great Crash to 45, which is the end of World War II. So maybe instead of one of these, I put in here the role of women. What happened to women during World War II? They build the war machine, so I would have every right to put that in there if I wanted to. I could also talk about the beginning of civil rights. Now it's up to you to decide. I would like to use 3 of these things to create a rank order defensible essay or thesis. I want to make a strong argument here for what fostered change in this period because of the Great Depression. Was it, do I want to just say the New Deal? And then as I go to write the essay, give some examples. Banks, jobs, the role of women, give some examples. Even the beginning of civil rights. And then give some examples of what I mean during this time period. But now that's up to you. But you want to make sure you create a defensible argument or a thesis out of this prompt. But now you know this is one about change, and it's about the Great Depression, how it fostered change in the United States between these time periods. Well, the next one here, this one's interesting too. This one says, evaluate the extent to which sustained continued economic growth affected United States culture from 1940 to 1970. Now you're thinking, oh my goodness, I don't know what this means. Well, now you stop and you think about the question. Well, first thing I want to say is, okay, what historical thinking skill could this be? Well, I saw the word affected. What does that mean? Well, this is now we have to know the difference between the word affected and effected. And to affect something is often to change something or cause a change. So this is, in actuality, another change essay. For this one here, I'll put Abraham Lincoln. He brought a lot of change in America too, right? Civil War, slavery, ends, change. There you go. Now this one, what is it trying to ask me? There seems like multiple parts in this one. So it's saying what changed the United States as far as culture. So this is culture. I'll put Ben Franklin there because, you know, he's Mac Daddy Ben Franklin. But what was it that affected the change? It was sustained economic growth. For this one, whenever I think anything economics, I think Henry Clay. The American system, right? Henry Clay goes there. All right, now I know. I'm looking at how sustained economic growth made a change in American culture, but now I want to see the years. I want to underline 1940 to 1970. But here, I'm also doing an extent. So this again brings in my rank order. I want to think now for a few moments from 1940 through 1970. So I had that timeline again. I told you, think of three things, social, political, economic, that come way after 1941. What are some things out there in the future that you want to think about you could use for an essay? Well, perhaps here in the second one, I'm going to brainstorm now down here. I can think about things like, let's think of broadly. Well, maybe I think of lifestyles. Are lifestyles changing because of economic growth? We're not sitting around going around and wearing poodle skirts to school, and guys are in slacks and button downs. Don't do that anymore in our schools, right? Lifestyles are changing. I could also think in terms of, well, here's another thing. I can think of role of women again. That's a possibility. I could think of civil rights. Sustained economic growth is affecting our culture. Civil rights would fall in there as well. And, social norms. Maybe that makes us also think of conformity. Now, of those, I'd only want to think of three of them that I could use to create, again, a defensible argument, a historically defensible claim or an argument for my thesis that represent real change in America. And that's how you kind of break down essay prompts. Think of them as to what's historical thinking skill. Think of them then as to, well, what are they asking me to do with this historical thinking skill? What's the topic that I'm trying to address? Then I want to think about when it says evaluate to what extent, how would I now create a defensible argument, historical argument, by rank ordering at least 3 things that I can argue represent a better change in the United States because of the Great Depression, or a change in the United States culture because of sustained economic growth. And you can do that with any essay prompts that you receive here in just a few days, if you think about it, by the time you watch this video. All right, I'm out. We'll have another one of these tips coming soon.